The football world has gone mad. A correct VAR decision in the West Ham and Arsenal game has sparked huge controversy. A possible title and relegation defining decision has overshadowed quite a monumental result at both ends of the table. As an Arsenal fan, I'm obviously happy, but it's got me debating with myself and rival fans what even is a foul anymore in football? Will we ever get 100% agreement on, these decisions? Has VAR just completely highlighted the flawed decisions that this game has? It's such a subjective game. Football isn't politics, and it feels like the tribalism in the game impacts our judgment on what we believe is a foul, isn't a foul, is a penalty or isn't a penalty, handballs, you name it. When a decision goes to VAR, we're asking the question, is it enough to overturn? When in reality, it should be, is it the right decision? Like, that's what VAR was brought in for, to correct wrong decisions. We need to just be honest about these decisions and, just call it for what it is. Like, it's pointless me one week saying, oh, geez, that was a penalty there. For us, it should have been a penalty and it wasn't given. But then when the same decision like happens for Man City or Tottenham or Man United, whoever, I have a different opinion then. Like, it just doesn't make sense. Should just call it for what it is. But I think a lot of like the frustration and a lot of the debate comes around like many of us don't actually know what the threshold for a foul is anymore. The game before the like that I grew up watching, it was a very much like physical. You'd have to really be fouled in order to get a free kick. It was such a like play on attitude of the game, whereas in today's game, it has gone softer. The modern fan now is saying like these phrases, contact is contact and that's a foul. So it's kind of like there's a conflict there between the game that was played before and the game that's played now. I would say that like back in the day that the goalkeepers were probably overprotected. You only have to look at a goalkeeper back in the day and he'd get the decision, the referee would give a free out. Nowadays the thought of like goalkeepers being underprotected, like it seems like it's kind of gone the other way in that sense, and there's a fair argument to suggest that they are underprotected. I think us as fans, like, we just need to know, like, especially from set pieces, because they've become such a big part of the game, like what is allowed and what isn't allowed. Now, the foul on Raya, like most football fans, I would say like 99% would agree that that is a foul. But what is being pinpointed is like other incidents involving Arsenal where, goalkeepers like Bayern for Man United, Emi Martinez for Aston Villa, a couple of other goalkeepers are examples. But I think like you're like comparing apples and oranges here when you're trying to say that like these incidents are, they're comparable to the Raya incident, because I just don't see it. Say, for instance, in a corner, you're standing your ground around the 6 yard box where the keeper is more than likely going to be. You just being in that position is definitely impacting the goalkeeper. Now, your movements and like, your use of your hands like are quite key in terms of like grabbing, holding. But I think like if you're using your body and like, like just being in a position um in the vicinity of the goalkeeper is not a foul, just being there alone. So it depends really on the context of each situation. Like, I look at that boy in their situation, and at one stage, I'm not like disputing that Saliba, he does like touch his arm at one stage, but he lets go. It's like a split second, and he backs into him a bit. He's contesting the ball by in there. I think, to be honest with you, I think it's weak goalkeeping. I think he can do so much better there. I think like Saliba, there's no doubt he's impacting the goalkeeper. He's putting the goalkeeper off, but that's something that that has always been allowed in football. There's a key difference between putting somebody off and fouling them. Again, only recently enough, Shay Given was on the fan debate, and he was talking about the incident earlier in the season involving the Gabriel goal at St James's Park, the winner, and he believes that again Saliba is in question here, that he fouls Pope, and prevents Pope from getting to the ball and punching the ball away before Gabriel heads it. I'll be honest, like I've watched the incident so many times, and like I just don't agree. I just don't see a foul. Has he impacted Pope from getting a punch to the ball? He probably has, but has he fouled him? Like this is like the key here. Like, has he fouled him? And I don't see a foul. Like, we've always had, like, throughout the years in the Premier League, has been, you standing on the goalkeeper. Does it's a role as a player, like from the set piece. Like, one player is to try and distract and to try and put off the goalkeeper, but without fouling them. So um there's such, like, it's fine margins. Like, you can be on, it's on the line. Like, it's, if you it depends on the context. Like, if you're holding, grabbing, I think you've gone past the line. But if you're just standing your ground and, just maintaining this position and using your physicality, your body, to just protect this area, then I don't think that's a foul. And I actually think, like, the most comparable incident to the David Raya one actually happened a few years ago in an Arsenal match, when a goal was ruled out, because Ben White was holding, like, the keeper's gloves. I think he was nearly trying to take the goalkeeper's gloves off. But, the ball came in, he's impacted the goalkeeper from, trying to punch out. The ball falls to Trossard, he whips it in, top bins, and the goal gets ruled out because, Ben White's impacting the goalkeeper's hand. So, like, we've seen it before. If you're holding and grabbing, like, I think that is a key difference, and that is a key thing that the referees will look at. Now, the corner kicks, like, this season, like, they have been a bit ridiculous, I will be honest with you, but this is not an Arsenal thing. This is, like, a widespread issue, and it is, a bit of a stain in the game, where we're looking at, these corner kicks coming in. There's so much, like, WWE, so much, like, grappling, holding, arms around the waist. Like, that that did happen in the David Raya incident as well, where you can clearly see Rice has his two hands around Mavropanas's waist, as he's trying to run into the box. But, like, I'm just kind of, like, thinking to myself, how, as a referee, do you, make a decision on this, where, like, yeah, the ball is coming into the goalkeeper's hands and he's trying to claim it. So, is does that take priority? And does, like, Rice having his hands around Mavropanos, is that, like, just secondary to what's happened to Raya? If you get what I'm saying, it's kind of like, which one do you prioritize? Like, I think in this context, I think they got it right that they prioritized the foul on Raya, because I think afterwards, like, if the ball isn't going into Raya's hands there, let's just say it's going towards Mavropanos, I think that's a foul, and I think that's a penalty, and a penalty would be given. But really, like, with these incidents, it's so hard for referees. If what if, like, an Arsenal player is fouling a West Ham player, but then, in, like, say at the back post, a West Ham player then is fouling an Arsenal player, or, like, what if there's, like, numerous fouls going on at the same time? Like, which one do you punish? Do you know what I'm saying? So it's like, it definitely is something that the referees need to get a hold of, to be able and try and clamp down on, and just bring a bit more, clarity to the situation. And, like, it seems to be like, many people believe that, like, this is just an Arsenal thing. Like, this is not an Arsenal issue. Like, this is a football issue. And, like, it's funny because I remember, like, I was chatting with my friend there. This was going back, geez, a good few months ago, and, like, he was making the point to me. We were sitting down, like, watching. I think Liverpool were playing Wolves. My friend was making the point that, Arsenal, they take the mick on corners with their holding and their grabbing, and, like, as he's making the point, like, Wolves had a corner and the ball gets played in, and there I am, like, as he's making the point, like, Liverpool players, like, their hands around the Wolves players, like, and, like, I'm turning to him, and I'm saying, are you watching? Like, this is your club doing this as well. As I said at the start of the video, like, we need to look at, like, decisions, and, try and be consistent from a basis of, like, not just being tribal towards it. Like, Like going back to when Arsenal played Tottenham at the Tottenham Hotspur Stadium, and Muani got like penalised for a push on Gabriel. I don't think that's a push. Like that's gone against my team, but I don't think that's a push. Do you know, again, Gabriel going head to head with Haaland. To be honest, if that's a red card, I can't like I think it's probably a red card. Do you know, I don't know if he actually head butted him, but he puts his head kind of, down Haaland, kind of like that. It probably is a red card, and like I'm not gonna disagree against if a red card was given. So like this isn't like just geez, like a fella here chatting and he's got his Arsenal hat on. Do you know, like these are decisions that like go against my club and go for my club. Do you know, we all have these decisions. Like it really is swings and roundabouts that like one week you get it, one week you don't. Do you know, it's just one of them, and maybe we have to live with the fact that like this is a flawed game. You know, it is a subjective game, and we're not going to get 100% accuracy on every decision. You know, like mistakes do happen in football with VAR and without VAR. Arsenal do test the boundaries, but a lot of clubs do. You know, we've had the boundaries tested against us. Like I remember the first game of the season years ago. Like this one thing with Arsenal fans, we do keep receipts, but like Leno gets fouled for the goal. You remember when Brentford got promoted? It was the first game of the season. You know, we lost 2-0. I think we had COVID in the camp and whatever, but there was a goal scored there when Leno, like, he's getting manhandled from the cross, and nobody cared back then. You know, I remember when Ramsdale was in goal for us, and I think it was Douglas Luiz scored a goal directly from a corner. But you see the Villa player, like, he's holding Ramsdale, and he's got him like by the sides here, holding, grabbing onto him. You know, and like the goal stood. Like it's up to the rule makers and the lawmakers to do something about this and actually come out and explain like the criteria, of what is and what isn't allowed in the game. There might be something in this video here that like you don't agree with, like, and that's okay. But like we need to have, a talk about this, and because we all want like the game to be consistent and we want it to be, as fair as possible. But maybe we're just living in a fantasy. But I want to know in the comments, like, let me know, is there any like ways that we can improve the game and try and make it like better so that we're not constantly arguing about this and about that, because it really feels like the game is turning into somewhat of a soap opera, like with the drama and just like, we're not sure. Like the fans in the stadium, like I feel sorry for, because they're almost like the last to know on like all of these decisions. Like if you're at home and watching on the TV, you find out first before the person in the ground, which is just incredible. I just wanted to say thanks to everyone that has been watching the videos there recently, and I hope you're enjoying them. I'm just Irish Arsenal fan trying to make football content. I absolutely love the game, very passionate about the game, and I could talk all day on football, like if I could. So yeah, really happy with like the engagement I've gotten so far, and I'm looking for more engagement too. If you might have a recommendation for a next video, or a talking point in the next video, I'm all for it. So let me know in the comments. But yeah, I hope everyone is all good, and thanks for watching Let's Chat Football, and I'll see you next time.